Thank you guys for being here. If you could do me a favor and just welcome our online audience that's joining us again. Thank you guys so much for watching online, wherever you're watching from today. We just would love for you to comment, let us know where you're watching from. We have people watching from all over the place. We would love to see you here at our campus one day really, really soon. As Pastor Carl said, we're kicking off a series today called The Pieces of Purpose. And I want to speak a message today titled The Picture of Purpose. So I need you to say it with me on three. Can you say the picture of purpose? 1, 2, 3. The picture of purpose. We can do a little bit better than that. So let's say it one more time on 3. 1, 2, 3. The picture of purpose. So we're going to talk today about how sometimes God gives us a picture of our purpose, but sometimes the pathway to that picture doesn't always look like we think it will look. But before we jump into that today and talk about purpose, I wanted to show you guys some photos that I came across, and I wanted to see if it was okay if we kind of poke some fun at some people this morning. Is that good? So does anyone know what the Face app is? Is anyone familiar with the Face app? Basically what it is you can take a picture or a selfie, and what the app will do is it will transform your face to look like something or someone else. And so we came across some pictures today, and we're playing around with the Face app, and I just wanted to put that first picture of Pastor Carl on the screen. This is Pastor Carl if he was a girl. So he thinks that he is a good-looking girl, but that's what he says. I don't really know how the app got to this picture, but I guess that might be his sister if he were to have one. Go ahead and show the picture of Julie. This is Julie if she were a guy, and Pastor Carl says that he is a lot better-looking girl than Julie is a guy. So that's what those are his thoughts. I also wanted to get Pastor Brandon in on the phone, but he didn't need the Face app to already have a funny-looking picture. We just left that one like it was. Someone got that picture when he was getting a haircut a couple of weeks ago, and so I figure we also should probably show a picture of me so I could make fun of myself. This is me with old age, and so I don't know what's going to happen in life to get from here to here, but there's going to be a lot of wear and tear, I guess, that's going to be on my journey. I don't know why they think I'm going to have the same hairstyle at that age that I have now, but I guess I have to keep the same haircut forever. And so what does this have to do with purpose? What does this have to do with the picture of purpose? Here's what I think we often do in life is we get a picture of what something could look like, just like you saw in that picture, and we wonder, what's it going to take to get from where I am now to that picture down the road? And I think the same is true with our purpose, is that sometimes we get this picture of what our purpose is. We get this snapshot of what we think God's calling us to do, and we wonder, how am I going to get to this snapshot? How am I going to get from this picture to actually living out the reality of what God wants me to do while I'm here on planet Earth? And I think along the way, what we see is that it doesn't always look like what we think it's going to look like. And today we're going to look at a character by the name of Joseph, who we find his story in the Old Testament, and we're going to see where God gave him a picture of his purpose. God gave him a dream. God gave him this image of what his purpose was, but then the journey from that picture of his purpose to actually living out his purpose isn't exactly what he thinks it's going to be. And so at this point in the story of Joseph, Joseph is a teenager. He's 17 years old, just a teenager, and he thinks God gives him this dream. But Joseph is a part of a very well-known family. He is the son of Jacob, and he has 11 other brothers. And in fact, Joseph is the favorite brother among all of his other brothers. And this is what it says in Genesis chapter 37. It says, "Now Israel," which is another name for Jacob, his father, "loved Joseph more than any of his other sons, because he had been born to him in old age. And he made an ornate robe for him," or a colorful robe, "to give to him." But so Joseph was his favorite, gives him this robe. It says, "When his brothers saw that their father loved him more than any of them, they hated him and could not speak a kind word to him." So Joseph was the favorite child. He had the favor of his father. He was loved more than any of his other siblings. And in fact, he was given this coat, this colorful coat, just to show that that he had his father's favor on his life. And so his brothers were extremely jealous of that. How many of you that have siblings would say you're the favorite child? You know that? How many of you would say you know for a fact you are not the favorite child? There are probably a lot more of you that would say that you're not the favorite child. So I have to tell you a story that my mom swears this didn't happen. I'm telling you it did happen because I remember this very vividly. And so I have a twin brother, and so our whole lives, I feel like, we're competing against the other one so that we could stand out, because everyone told us, well, you're just the same at this, or people made you think you were just the same. So everything we did was trying to like separate ourselves from the other, trying to be a little bit better. And so we would ask our parents, which one of us do you love more? And for you parents, if you have multiple kids, you probably get that question. Which one, if you could only have one of us, which one would you have? Which one do you love more? And so I would tell my mom if I got aggravated at her or if I felt like she was showing favor to my brother, I would say, Jake, he's just your favorite. My brother Jake, he's your favorite. You love him more than you love me. And there was one time where my mom was asking me to do some chores, and I was a middle school boy and was aggravated at my mom because I had to go take out the trash, like a lot of middle school boys probably do. If you have one, you know what I'm talking about. And I told my mom, you never make Jake do anything. And I remember she said, you know what, Hunter? I really do think your brother's my favorite. To that, I'm like, well, Eddie, I'm about to show you that he's going to be your favorite with my behavior. So I start acting up. And so I definitely know what it's like to not be the favorite because my mom, she swears she didn't say it. I'm telling you she did. And so I know what that's like to not be the favorite. And so imagine Joseph's brothers, that he is, the younger brother has this colorful robe, has the favor of their father, and he is just the favorite. And so you can imagine the rivalry or the drama that would happen in a situation like that with a family like this. And then to make matters worse, Joseph has this idea that he's got this dream that God's given him that he wants to share with his brothers. So it says in Genesis 37, as we continue the story, Joseph had a dream, and when he told it to his brothers, they hated him all the more. So we know that they hate him because he's got favor. They hate him because he's the favorite. They hate him because he's got the robe. But now they hate him because he's got this dream. And he said to them, listen to this dream that I had. While we were binding sheaves of grain in the field, when suddenly my sheaf rose and it stood upright, while your sheaves gathered around mine and bowed down to it. And for a minute, it's like, okay, Joseph, what are you talking about, bro? You're talking about sheaves of grain. So he had this idea this dream that his sheaf of grain would stand up and his brothers would bow down to him. Basically, what he believed his dream was, what he believed his purpose was, the picture of his purpose that God had given him was that he would be a person of influence. He would be a ruler, some sort of king, that he would have people that bow down to him. He would be a person of authority and high status. And so he thinks that he's going to be a person that is very noble, that's very honorable, that people are going to bow down to him. And so imagine what his brothers thought when he's the favorite, he gets his dad's robe, but then he says, I'm also going to be someone really important, and you guys are going to have to bow down to me. So you can imagine what his brothers would have thought. And you wonder, why did Joseph even share that? It's kind of like, Joseph, why didn't you just keep that dream to yourself? Kind of like when God tells us something, we often feel like we have to go post it to Facebook every time God tells us something. You guys know the people I'm talking about? Some of you are that people, that's okay. But sometimes every time we feel like God's telling us to do something, we've got to tell somebody else. And it's like, maybe you should keep that to yourself. It's almost like Joseph, you probably could have just held on to that one. You probably didn't have to tell anybody about that dream, but he does. And so they hate him. And I wonder why Joseph shared it. And I think Joseph shared the picture of his purpose because he knew that he was different. He knew there was something different about him. He had favor. He was loved. He knew that he was a little bit different. And I wonder how many of us will let a dream die inside of us because we're scared of being just a little bit different. I wonder how many of us will let the picture of our purpose kind of fade away because we're not so sure that we're okay with being a little bit different than everybody else. We know that the dream God's put in us is going to make us stand out. We know that the dream that God has put in us is going to kind of separate us, and it's going to make us feel different, and we're not okay with that. And so today we're going to break down 3 aspects of this picture of purpose that Joseph gets, and we're going to relate it to the picture of our purpose. So over the next few minutes, I want you to think through, what is that snapshot for you? What is that picture of purpose that you believe God has put inside your heart? What does he want you to do while you're here on earth? How does he want you to serve him? What is your dream? What is the dream that God has put inside of you? The first part of the picture is that there's the perception of the picture. So how you perceive the picture of your purpose goes a long way in you actually living out the full potential that God has placed inside of you. So how you understand that purpose, how you perceive that purpose will go a long way in you actually living out the reality of that purpose. And so for Joseph, what he perceives from this picture is that he's going to be some kind of ruler. He's going to be a person of influence. He might be a king. And so the perception of his picture is that people are going to bow down to him. He's going to have authority. He's going to have influence. People are going to like him. He's going to be noble. People are going to have crazy respect for him. So he's going to work his way up to be some sort of ruler, and people are just going to love it. He's going to love it. That's the dream. That's the picture of his purpose. And so as the story continues, this is what we see. His brothers said to him, so do you intend to reign over us? Will you actually rule us? Like for real, Joseph, you think you're going to be that someday? You think you're going to have that kind of status? And it says they hated him all the more because of his dream and what he said. But then to make matters even more worse, Joseph says, then he had another dream. It's like, Joseph, just write this down in your journal, bro. You don't have to share this with everybody. He says, then he had another dream. He told it to his brothers, listen, I had another dream, and this time the sun and moon and 11 stars were bowing down to me. So imagine what his brothers thought. Like, okay, here we go again. But this time, it's not just sheaves of grain. It's like the sun, it's the moon, it's stars. They're bowing down to Joseph because he thinks his dream is that he's going to be important. He's going to be a ruler. He's going to have people that respect him and that bow down to him. And I think what Joseph probably didn't understand well when it came to the perception of his purpose was that the dream was not really about a position. Here's the thing, I think Joseph probably had in his mind that okay, I'm just gonna pursue after this dream. I'm gonna go after this dream. Life's gonna be great. It's gonna be awesome. I'm gonna go after this dream and things will all work out. And I think what we do in our life is that we get this idea of this dream that God's put in our heart and we just start chasing after the dream. And what happens is that the dream starts to get glory over God. Our purpose starts to get glory over God. But here's the reality is that there's a difference in making your dream about God's glory and making God's glory your dream. There's a difference in having a dream that you're going to be an influential person and that you'll honor God along the way and that's how God will get glory. There's a difference in doing that versus having a godly mindset that says, God, whatever I do, whatever it takes, wherever you place me, I'm going to pursue you. I'm going to make you known. I'm going to bring you honor and glory. And that's it. I'm chasing after your glory, not some dream. And I think what Joseph was doing was that he started to chase after a dream. He started to chase after this picture of his purpose. And what happens is that our identity starts to get caught up in the dream. And our identity becomes our dream. And you can easily lose your identity when you don't perceive the picture of purpose well. If we're not careful, what will happen is we start to chase these dreams, as we start to chase after our purpose, we'll find all of our identity wrapped up in whether or not we're achieving the dream. We'll find all our identity on whether or not the picture that God gave us is actually becoming a reality somewhere. And so I think for Joseph, he probably starts to lose his identity a little bit. He probably starts to think about how he's going to be, he probably starts to get a little confident and think about how he's going to be a person of influence, that people are just going to love him, people are going to respect him, and that life's going to be great because people are going to be bowing down to him. He probably thought because he had his father's favor that would be an easy path to live out the purpose God created him to live. He probably thought that because he had the coat, he was wearing the coat, and that coat made him special. And because he was special, that the path to his purpose would be pretty easy. He probably thought that road wasn't going to be what it actually turned out to be. He probably thought his family would get on board. He probably thought his brothers would love him and support him to go after the dream that God has put deep within his heart. And that was his perception of the dream. And I think what we'll do is we'll get a picture of what we think God's calling us to do, and we'll perceive that a certain way. And what we'll start to do is we'll start to write out or map out or plan out exactly how we're going to get from the picture to the reality. And I think that's what Joseph was probably doing. I think Joseph didn't understand when he was perceiving this picture what it was going to take to get from the picture to the reality of his purpose. I think what Joseph probably didn't understand was the grind that he would have to go through in order to get from that dream to actually fulfilling God's plan for his life. And so how we perceive the picture goes a long way in us actually living out the purpose in which God created us to live. But it's not only about the perception of the picture. What often happens is that there are problems with the picture. Oftentimes when we get the picture of our purpose, it's not going to be an easy road, and there's going to be problems that come because of the picture that God has given us, and it certainly happens to Joseph. Here's the thing, when God puts a dream in your heart, you can't expect everyone to be excited about your excitement. And so imagine Joseph, he shares this dream with his brothers. He shares this idea with his brothers that he's going to be this ruler and he's going to have influence. People are going to be bowing down to him. He shares his purpose with his brothers, and it says his brothers hated him all the more because of it. They hated him for it. The people he thought would respect him, the people he thought would love him through that, the people he thought would actually probably help him get from the picture to the reality are the people that hate him. They're the people that reject him. They're the people that deny that dream. They're the people that create problems for Joseph. And so I wonder if Joseph was looking for the approval of his brothers in order to live out the dream that God had put inside of him. And we'll do that. We'll look for other people to get on board with what we're doing. We'll look for other people to agree with us. We'll look for other people to believe in us. We'll look for other people to have confidence in whatever that dream is that God has put in our heart. But here's the reality is that when you live for the approval of people, it keeps you from the purposes of God. When you seek affirmation from everyone else, what will happen is you will miss out on the life God created you to live because all you're trying to do is satisfy other people. All you're trying to do is make other people happy. Well, if they would just love me through this, then I could get there. Or what happens is if they deny it, we'll run from it. If they deny the dream or if they discourage us in the dream, we'll just run away from that because that must not be it. But people, that's not the way it works. Just because people don't agree with us or just because people don't like it doesn't mean God did not place that inside your heart. Just because they don't love it doesn't mean you can't. Don't let the dreams that God has placed in your heart die from the negativity of those around you. Don't let those dreams, I believe in this room, God has placed some big dreams deep within in your heart. But how many of us will let someone else's negativity talk us out of pursuing that life that God created us to live? All because we want approval from someone else. All because we want affirmation from someone else. All because we want other people to like us, other people to get on board. It's not their dream. You can't expect them to love it the way you love it. It's not their purpose. You can't expect them to get on board with it the way you are on board with it. It's not theirs. It doesn't belong to them. It belongs to you. God gave it to you. It's special for you, and he wants you to live that out, not them. So you don't live for the approval of other people. You live to fulfill the purpose God created you to live. In fact, I would probably say this, that if you don't face negativity or resistance or pushback when it comes to your dreams, maybe you're not dreaming big enough. If everyone loves it, or if everyone believes in it, or if everyone agrees with you, maybe the dream's too small. Maybe God's trying to place a bigger dream within your heart or a bigger dream within your mind because he wants to show you something more about himself. And in fact, if people aren't pushing back, maybe it's not big enough. You can't expect them to understand it. You might have to go there alone. That pathway from the picture to actually living in God's purpose might be lonely. You might have to do it by yourself. But God called you to do it. He might not have called them. The plan isn't for them. The purpose isn't for them. The purpose is for you. The dream is for you. You're the only one who gets it the way you do. So you can't expect everyone else to get on board because it will create problems with the picture. And in fact, oftentimes rejection can really be a blessing. Rejection can be a blessing a lot. It happens in relationships all the time. People will be like, God, please just give me that person. God, if you just give me that person, I'll be the happiest person in the world and I'll fulfill my purpose. How many of you have prayed that before? So many of us. Our teenagers do it all the time. I talk to them about it all the time. They're always like, God, if you could just give me this girl, if you could just give me this guy, I'll be happy. And I'm like, you have no idea. And what they find out later is that person that rejected them was actually their biggest blessing, right? It happens to all of us. Sometimes rejection can be a blessing. Maybe you didn't get that promotion or you didn't get that job that you thought, if I get this job, that's what's going to take me to my purpose. That's what's going to take me to living out the dream that God's put in my life. And then it didn't happen because there were problems with the picture. But then for some of you in the room, 20, 30, 40 years down the road, what you realize is that no was setting you up down the road for a bigger yes. And God was saying no in the moment so that he could give you the opportunity to have a bigger yes down the road. Sometimes rejection is the best thing that propels us towards our purpose. In fact, that's what happened for Joseph. And what we'll see as Pastor Carl continues this series next week, and as we look at the details of Joseph's life, is that it's actually the rejection, the problems with his brothers that move him forward to live out the purpose God created him to live. In fact, if Joseph wasn't rejected, he would have never lived out the purpose God created him to live. Rejection can be a blessing. So here's what his brothers say at a moment in the story where Joseph is sent by his father to go find his brothers. His brothers see him coming in the distance, and this is what they say to one another. They say, "Here comes that dreamer." It's okay if people say that about you. I wonder if people do say that about you. "Here comes that dreamer," they said to each other. "Come, now let's kill him and throw him into one of these cisterns and say that a ferocious animal devoured him. Then we'll see what comes of his dreams." So his brothers, who he thought would support him, that he probably thought would be on board with the dream, actually are plotting to kill him. They want to kill him. They want to end his life because they're so tired of the dreams. They're tired of Joseph's favor. They're so sick of hearing about this. So what happens is Joseph comes and they actually strip him of his robe. They take off his colorful robe, which would have represented his father's favor and his identity. They take his robe and they throw him into a pit. They throw him into a cistern. And then they just say, well, maybe we shouldn't kill him. So here's what we'll do. We will just, instead of killing him, we will sell him to a group called the Ishmaelites, where later Joseph would be sold into slavery at a royal household of Egypt, in a royal household of Egypt. So this is what it says. When Joseph came to his brothers, they stripped him of his robe, that ornate, colorful robe he was wearing, and they took him, they threw him into a cistern. And some of you think you got family drama. Think about Joseph. He gets thrown into a pit. So he thought he was going to be a ruler. He thought he was going to have influence. And then there were problems with the picture. And the problem was that he thought he was going to be in a palace, he actually found himself in a pit where he's looking up at the people he thought would support him, saying, God, what are you doing? It wasn't supposed to work this way. The circumstances weren't supposed to turn out like that. Well, here's the thing. Your circumstances don't dictate your purpose. Just because your circumstances change, that doesn't mean your purpose ever changes. But sometimes we'll get caught in a situation where our circumstances change and we think, well, maybe God got it wrong. Or maybe that dream wasn't for me. Maybe it was for someone else. Because if I'm in this situation, there's no way that that was actually the dream God placed in my heart. So imagine Joseph. He has the dream that he's going to be a ruler. People are going to bow down to him. He's going to have authority. That's what he thought his purpose was. Then he finds himself in a pit, looking up at his brothers, thinking, how did I get here only to be sold into slavery? So instead of being someone who was served, instead of being someone who would be served, he would now be someone who had to serve other people. Circumstances change, but that doesn't mean your purpose does. So what happens when you find yourself in a pit? What happens when things don't go the way you thought they would go when you got the picture of your purpose? What happens when that pathway is filled with negativity? How do you respond? For some of you, it could be that you're battling some sort of sickness and you feel like that sickness is taking away your purpose. For some of you, it could be that your parents got a divorce and you thought that changed the whole trajectory of your life and that you can never live out the purpose God created you to live because your circumstances changed. Maybe somebody left you or abandoned you, or a friend totally just gave up on you, and you think that there's no way you can get to your purpose because your circumstances changed. Your purpose isn't determined by the circumstances that you find yourself in. It's determined by the God who's going to carry you through every single day. And when people leave you, he's going to be there. When things seem like they're just absolutely failing, God's perfect love shines in those moments to show you that the dream is so much bigger than the circumstances that you find yourself in. Circumstances don't define your purpose. So there's the perception of the picture. There's the problems with the picture. And then we'll land the plane here that there is the pathway to the picture. There's a picture that you get where God says, this is your purpose. This is what I want you to do. This is how I've called you to live and who I've called you to be. But then there's the pathway from that picture to the next picture. And the thing is that pathway from the first picture to the next picture doesn't always look like we think it's going to look. That's what happened in Joseph's life, is that the pathway didn't look like what he thought it was going to look like, and problems actually lead to a pathway that we never expected would happen. And so I wonder if Joseph keeps asking this question, God, why is this happening to me? God, if this was the dream, then why am I in this pit? If this is the dream, why am I being sold into slavery? If this is the dream, why is there so much temptation? If this is the dream, why are you letting these things happen to me? And I wonder if we do the same thing. I wonder if some of us are doing that right now. I wonder how many of us, we are standing in the middle of our dream. The dream that God put in our life, we're standing right in the middle of it. But we're missing it because it doesn't look like what we thought it would look like. I wonder how many of us are right in the middle of our purpose, right in the middle of the pathway to the picture, but we don't see it, or we're missing it because it doesn't feel like what we thought it would feel like. Because maybe some of the people that we thought would be involved aren't involved. Or maybe we're not doing some of the things that we thought we would be doing. I wonder how many of us are missing it. Just because it doesn't feel right. Just because it doesn't look right. Just because it's not what we imagined it would be. Because every single one of us get to a point in our life where we get the picture. We get the dream. God gives us the dream. He places the dream in our heart. But somewhere in the middle of that, it's like, God, what are you really doing? What are you up to? What are you really calling me to? Because it just doesn't feel right. It doesn't look right. This isn't how I thought it would turn out. This isn't the way I thought it would be. And what happens is we get so caught up in chasing a dream that we forget to chase after God, because what we miss is that God is in every single moment of that. But we'll chase after the dream. We'll chase after the purpose without realizing that it's God that we're following in the middle of it. We don't follow a dream. We follow Jesus. And as you start to follow Jesus, your dreams start to follow you. Your purpose starts to follow you because you're following the one who created it all. The goal isn't to follow a dream. The goal is to follow God. And I wonder, as a teenage boy, what Joseph thought when the circumstances didn't go the way he thought they would go, when the pathway from the picture to the reality was a lot harder than he would ever have imagined. How did he actually get to his purpose? It wasn't by chasing after the dream. It was just by being faithful to God. One thing it says about Joseph's life over and over again, and Pastor Carl will hit on this, is that Joseph found favor in the eyes of God because he was faithful, because he wasn't chasing after a dream. He was chasing after God. But we'll get so caught up in chasing the dream. Do I have the right skills? Do I have the right talent? Do I have the right ability? And instead of focusing on what we're doing, what we should be focusing on is who we're becoming. Instead of focusing on the skills that we have or the talents that we have to get to the dream, what we'll do is that, or what we should do is that we should be focusing on who God's called us to be. How can I be more faithful to God? How can I say yes to God today? Because even though it doesn't look like what I thought it would look like, any yes to God is helping move me towards my purpose. So maybe you're a teenager or a young adult today, and you want that purpose now. Like God's given you that dream and you're ready to get there. I just need to get to the picture. I don't want to wait. Wait, pause. I'm right there in the middle of that, of just waiting, following after God, because as I follow God, the dream will follow me. Maybe you are living in the picture. Maybe God gave you the picture of your purpose and you're living in that. And you know today that the only way you got there was by chasing after God, saying yes to God. And it wasn't about the dream. It was about following God. It wasn't about your skills. It's not about your talent or your abilities. It's about your willingness just to take your next step to draw closer to Jesus. There's a leadership quote that we throw around a lot here, and it's this idea that competency gets you in the room, but character keeps you there. Competency will get you into any room, but it's your character that keeps you in the room. Who you are, how you treat people, how you love people, your integrity, who are you behind closed doors. Competency will get you there, but character is what keeps you there. And here's the thing, you might be fully capable of doing whatever it is that God needs you to do. You might have all the skills, you might have all the knowledge, or whatever it is to live out the purpose God created you to live, but there's a pathway. But the reason there's a pathway from the picture to the reality is because it's not so that you can develop more skills, it's because God wants to show you things as a person. God wants you just to grow as a follower of Jesus. God just wants you to take steps closer to him. And it's not about your skills or your talents on the pathway. It's about becoming the person that God has called you to be. Discovering your purpose isn't as much about what you're doing. It's about who you're becoming. And for Joseph, he had to know that. Joseph had to know that it was about chasing after God. It was about God developing this faithfulness inside of him. Like I said, what it says about Joseph is that he found favor in the eyes of the Lord. He kept saying yes to God, even when the pathway didn't look like what he thought it would look like. Because for Joseph, he gets thrown into the pit, sold into slavery. It doesn't work out like you think it's gonna work out. And most of us know this, that the reality is that the picture doesn't always look like what we think it's going to look like. But it's not about that. It's not about that. It's not about it feeling right. It's not about it looking like what we thought it would look like. It's about saying yes to God in every single moment. And just because the dream doesn't look like what we thought the dream would look like doesn't mean that God's given up on us. It doesn't mean that God's abandoned us. What it really means is that God is setting us up to live out the purpose that he created us to live. He's doing something bigger in us. He's working deeper than us than we could see. And for Joseph, it would be 20 years before he lived out the reality of the picture. But I think the reason he had to go through that is because if he didn't say yes to God while he was in the pit, he wouldn't say yes to God when he was in the palace. And so our purpose is about us becoming the person God has created us to be. Don't get so caught up in the pathway that you miss the God of the universe just showing you more of who he wants you to be. I believe God's put big dreams inside of you, big dreams. And if not, we're gonna pray for that in just a minute, that God would place big dreams inside every single heart here today. And we're just gonna trust and believe that we don't have to get so caught up in making sure the pathway looks right. We're just gonna trust God along the way, that he's gonna put us in the right position. He's gonna put us in the right places, all so that we can live out the purpose he created us to live. Will you pray with me? God, thank you for who you are, and thank you for every single person here, every single person that's watching online today, God. And I just pray that every single one of us would get a snapshot of our picture of purpose. God, that you would show every person today what you've called them to do. And God, you don't give us the details. It doesn't always look clear, but God, I pray today that we wouldn't get so caught up in the pathway to the picture being perfect that we forget you. I pray that we wouldn't get so caught up in chasing after a dream or chasing after a purpose that we forget just to say yes to you. So God, I pray that you would show us whatever it is today that we need to do so that we can live out the potential, live to the full potential that you created us to live. God, I pray today that you would show us, every single one of us, what you're calling us to. Not so that we can live out the dream necessarily, but so that we can live the life that you created us to live. God, we love you. It's in Jesus' name we pray. Amen.